United Team Rocket, the evil organization of Pokemon that has set the standard for fear and power throughout all of Pokemon under the Iron Fist. That is Giovanni. What if I told you there was someone before Giovanni, that he had nearly conquered all of Kanto, and now he's still out there somewhere traveling between entire universes and is unwilling to stop until he has succeeded in his plan to rule over existence itself? Prepare yourself for the complete story of one of the greatest Pokemon masters of all time, and the organization that strikes fear into the hearts of all. Howdy there, I'm Curly, and we're simply going to go through the entire timeline of Giovanni and Team Rocket as we know it. They are arguably one of the only 3 organizations, or current organizations, within Pokemon that are really truly 100% inherently evil. Meanwhile, we have other organizations that, yeah, they do some wrong, yeah, they could have done, things that didn't hurt others, but they're not inherently evil. After all, Team Rocket does actually directly state how it pursues evil and the exploitation of Pokemon. Doesn't get much more direct than that. They focus on stealing or capturing rare Pokemon, selling them, and even conducting cruel experimental research on them. They don't even care if they honestly kill a Pokemon for that matter, as we see through the history we are going to explore. And their oath is quite literally, steal Pokemon for profit, exploit Pokemon for profit, all Pokemon exist for the glory of Team Rocket. Their ultimate goal is to take over the world using Pokemon. So, again, yeah, pretty inherently evil with no means to hide it whatsoever. They are boisterous, they are upfront, they are evil, they know it, and they display it constantly. Now, I am going to be combining information as we know it from the games and the anime, including a little bit of information from the manga, just to give you some extra examples of how consistent they've kept Giovanni across all the mediums. Now, I'm not basing the timeline off of the manga specifically because it does vastly vary from everything else overall, but I love the manga in its version of telling of Team Rocket, and you should just simply watch my video on the complete Red Arc if you want to know everything about the Pokemon Adventures manga Red Arc. But how about we get into a time before Giovanni? In the anime, in fact, more specifically in the radio drama The Birth of Mewtwo, a series that would be broadcast over the course of 5 Sundays leading up to the premiere of Mewtwo Strikes Back in Japanese theaters back in 1999, we learn of the original leader of Team Rocket, Madam Boss. Just the fun name that is just 2 surnames almost put together, Madam Boss. Now, she is, again, the founder of Team Rocket, and she would eventually pass her rank down to her son, Giovanni. So this isn't a, oh, I found somebody on the street. No, this is, I am an evil person. Allow me to pass my evilness down to my son that I raised to be evil. She controls armies, gets elite squads to capture rare Pokemon and auction them for money. She genuinely hates Pokemon. So much so that unlike every other team leader, every other evil person in all of Pokemon where they're like, I hate Pokemon. Anywho, I have a Crobat. Look at this. This is my pride and joy. She, on the other hand, has no Pokemon herself. She only cares about the money for selling them. Or, alternatively, she genuinely only cares about Mew and Mewtwo because she believes that with their power she can rule the world. And so, she gives the ultimate mission to find Mew, to help create Mewtwo, to her best woman, Miyamoto, who she says was the idealized version of a Team Rocket member. Her mission was to truly catch Mew, brainwash it, and profit. But Miyamoto was thought to have died in an avalanche, actually, and years later, Madam Boss would officially step down and pass her role to Giovanni. Now, Madam Boss was so money hungry that when she first heard a voice recording of Mew proving its existence, she pauses and goes, can we put that on a CD? I put that on a CD and let's go sell it. We need to sell this, people. And I mean, that would just go out to anybody who would want it. Think about it. Pokemon breeders, Pokemon trainers, the Pokemon League itself. This is huge information. Probably any other researcher, professors, whatever, you name it, they're probably going to buy the information and go nuts with it, and that's what Madame Boss really wanted. Massive wealth. Now, Miyamoto might actually sound like an incredibly familiar name to you. It is a name we have heard in passing time and time again, with no real explanation unless you actually dig deeper. In which case, you would find out Miyamoto is the mother to Jessie, one from our lovely trio from the trio of Team Rocket itself. Now, what happened with Miyamoto is that she did get an audio recording of Mew, then she was set to capture it, though she had already had Jessie at this point and carried a photo with her at all times of Jessie, as she was heartbroken that she couldn't properly be there for her daughter. So, as she was out trying to capture Mew now, she was caught in a massive blizzard. The blizzard eventually broke, and then Mew appeared. She attempted to convince Mew, hey, let me catch you, only for Mew to disappear, the storm to return, and for us to hear a scream as an avalanche came through and Miyamoto was presumed dead. Although this is proven to be incorrect, as she somehow is making reports in the following years to Giovanni, and even Giovanni himself directly states that he has no idea where she is, but that she might still, clearly, be looking for Mew. But we leave that story there, as one day I would love to complete our Team Rocket trio, their stories, the stories of their families, and more. But for now, we return to the full evil organization primarily in the games, rather than these lovely characters that may have stolen Pokemon, but absolutely captured our hearts. Giovanni rises. In the very beginning of our timeline, Giovanni had immense funding in many forms of media that he had actually appeared in. In the manga, he basically owned half of Kanto. That's not even a dramatized version of it. No, he basically owned half of Kanto, gym leaders and all. Insanity. Meanwhile, in the games and the anime, this actually isn't too far away from being the truth. He funds research, all of his grunts, and his collection or collecting of rare Pokemon. After all, he isn't just a boss, he is a genuine Pokemon master, and you'll soon learn that. Giovanni himself had spent a chunk of his life as the leader of the 8th gym of Kanto, found within Viridian City, where he is from and where he battles with what he calls the Gems of Viridian City, mainly consisting of the ground types, Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, Rhyhorn, Rhydon, and with some variation, depending on the form of media, that might include a Cloyster and Beedrill in the manga, a Persian in Pokemon Yellow, which he is always shown to truly really love whenever he has a Persian, a Kingler in the anime, or even a Mewtwo when he wanted to decimate Blue at one point, and we will cover that later. The problem with his time as a gym leader is he genuinely became bored with life. There was no challenge anymore. He had nobody he felt that he could respect in terms of power. He just couldn't be beat, and so he would eventually abandon the Viridian City gym. In the manga, he finds a trainer's abilities just as important as their Pokemon's abilities, their strength, their speed, their aptitude. He is able to analyze information incredibly fast, recognizing upon exiting a cave and walking with Red in the manga that the ambient air temperature was very, very high for some reason. And well before he would even see them, he goes, this has to be the work of a Magmar. No, 2 Magmar. And that's exactly what they find, burning down a facility that they were trying to go back to. And in every version of Giovanni, we find that he is an individual who has respect of others who have power, making deals for what he wants, and when he loses, he respects the player and the deal that he made with them. Though this does not mean that he won't try again one day in the future, in a different land, in a different way, in a different time. As Giovanni took over Team Rocket, we have some smaller details to talk about that lead up to the events of the first and second games. Yes, we are still before Generation 1. So one of these details is actually involving the information and identity of who would eventually be revealed as Giovanni's son, Silver. Silver is the red-headed character we see who steals a Pokeball from Oak's lab in Pokemon Gold and Silver. He's another incredible Pokemon trainer who initially does not treat Pokemon with respect, seeing them as tools or a means to an end. Someone that would lose time and time again in battles and complain about how his Pokemon were just not strong enough and that it was their fault. He just needs to catch stronger Pokemon. Unfortunately, this is all a sign of mistreatment to Silver, abuse of many kinds, neglect, and more in his younger years, as it has now seeped into how he treats people and Pokemon alike. This mentality is actually derived from none other than his childhood under Giovanni, again, his father. This was revealed in the manga first, though Silver is said, oddly enough, to have type AB blood, while Giovanni has type O, meaning that, biologically speaking, it is impossible for that to have happened and for Giovanni to be his father, but this is simply a mistake in writing since Giovanni being his father is official, even in the games and so on. The question, though, is who is Silver's mother? Because Silver had to have been conceived before the events of the first games, because Gold and Silver kind of just takes place 3 years later. In the history of Team Rocket, there have only been 2 notable Team Rocket members that are women. Sham, who is only seen in the manga, and Ariana, though Sham was actually designed based on Ariana before she had a name. And in that fashion, Sham was also one of the children that were with Silver, leaving only Ariana as the only red-headed character that would even remotely be tied to Silver. And boy, she has to have some really, really strong genes, considering that Silver should not have red hair. Like, that's some strong allele she's got going on right there. It actually makes me wonder if I want to do like a family diagram of all characters in Pokemon. It would be interesting to see who's related to who, especially with the fact that Legends Arceus came out. So what does this all mean? So it means that Giovanni and Ariana had Silver and had basically intended to raise him as nothing more than your average grunt, pushing him to his limits, instilling him with their own ideals of strength until he would become like them. But it just did not work out and instead traumatized Silver, ruining his understanding of the world until years later in Generation 2 when it is eventually remedied. Or in the manga when he's stolen away by the Masked Man. The Masked Man! So Giovanni had established a relationship with Ariana, they have a child, and he's like, hey, how about you and some of the other executives go off to the Sevi Islands and run the warehouses out there while searching for the Ruby and Sapphire gems. It's almost like there was a promotion going on for a new game coming out. I've got Kanto on lock. And so the executives that would be later known as Ariana and Archer set off for 5 Island. The shadowy hand of Giovanni would then employ members of Team Rocket to continue stealing from others in any way that they could in order to fund his own ambitious goals of having complete control. He would be revealed in the anime to even own a theme park called Pokemon Land where there were giant Pokemon, while also continuing to fund scientific research in the mission of getting DNA from Mew to eventually create Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo was created in the basement of the burned mansion on Cinnabar Island, while in the manga, Gym Leader Blaine was the primary reason Mewtwo was completed, and he had used his own DNA to fill in the missing pieces that they didn't have from the cultured Mew DNA. Here in the games, we actually have a different story. Giovanni was hands-off outside of funding the project and having his more elite grunts watch over it all. Not that they really needed to, the scientists taking part in all of this was too enamored with what could be done rather than the morality of their actions to actually care. And so, through reading their diaries, we learn of 2 individuals who lead the project and worked side by side to create Mewtwo, Blaine and Mr. Fuji, the man that would otherwise be known as the old man who looks after abandoned Pokemon in Lavender Town, or Lavender City, I suppose. Back before the events of the main games, he was Dr. Fuji and was even the founder of the Cinnabar Lab. It was there that they conducted cruel experiments without rest to satiate their lust for science and create the ultimate life form that would be stronger than anything ever found in nature, an unstoppable force. But after completion, Mewtwo would eventually escape, creating a disastrous wake in result of its rage-fueled wanton destruction. Blaine and Fuji, both realizing the sins that now hang upon them, abandoned their positions within Team Rocket and sought to ensure this would never happen again. Blaine would eventually come to found the Cinnabar Gym, living in the shadow of his own mistakes every single day while ensuring Team Rocket never comes back, and he can hopefully ensure they never attempt to create another Mewtwo with what little might remain in the basement. Meanwhile, Fuji would shed his doctorate, leaving it in the shadows as he then attempted to repent for his own sins by taking in abandoned Pokemon that were left behind, mistreated, abused, as he had done to Mewtwo. Each Pokemon saved would be another point of karma in his favor, as he would eventually learn to not only love Pokemon, but sacrifice for them. But how was all this funding allocated? The funding, of course, would be stealing rare Pokemon of all types, but he didn't really care how it was done. Whether that be through direct stealing, raiding Pokemon centers, defeating other trainers, or even a breeding center that was a scam run by Butch and Cassidy in the anime. Even when Togepi was presented to him in the anime by Team Rocket, despite it being a rare Pokemon, Giovanni was unimpressed due to Togepi's inability to fight, scolding the Team Rocket trio and sending them away with Togepi. While conducting all of this, he would keep himself and his voice hidden from everyone at this time as well, ensuring that he could burn everything down and restart if he needed to. The Red Years. Now we are truly within the Generation 1 timeline, and here there were no limits to which Giovanni would have Team Rocket act. They would distribute Pokemon as prizes through the Rocket Game Quarter and the secret subterranean hideout underneath. This, of course, would encourage people to gamble and waste their money for rare Pokemon that Team Rocket had to not even spend a single penny on because they stole them. I wouldn't be surprised if what they did was, oh, here's Mr. Joe walking on over, here's the money, and Team Rocket's like, here's your Pokemon. They then look at another guy and go mug him in the back alley. They go mug Mr. Joe in the back alley, take the Pokemon back, and now they have all of his money and the Pokemon he won. He then walks back in and is like, I got mugged. And they're like, I'm sorry, would you like to gamble more to get another one to replace it? Our policy says we can't just replace it because we don't have any more of them, even though they literally have it back already. That would actually also explain why those Pokemon are incredibly hard to train in both the manga or the games themselves in terms of their rarity or even their temperament. Team Rocket would also scour throughout all of Mount Moon to search for any valuables that they could sell, whether that be fossils, moonstones, you name it. Maybe a funny little Geo that looks like a Clefairy's face, I don't know. We get further example of this though in the Pokemon Adventures manga, as even Giovanni himself was researching fossils and even let Red, unaware of who Giovanni was at the exact time, keep an amber fossil. The list of misdeeds honestly goes on and on, stealing a TM from an individual in Cerulean City, stealing Cubone skulls in Lavender Town, which that in and of itself is incredibly strange considering, like, what is the plan? Are you just going to sell the skulls on the black market? Not that it would be out of the ordinary for them, it's just how rare are Cubones supposed to be? Though the whole Cubone act does result in a full hostage situation of Mr. Fuji, as he was attempting to protect a Cubone after the death of a Marowak by the direct hands of Team Rocket, who continue to attack Mr. Fuji and Cubone anyway until you save them. This only gets more interesting as Team Rocket would spend their time trying to take the blueprints to the Master Ball from Silphco. After all, if you're going to spend your money somewhere, what better place is there to spend it than endless supplies that you can then use to build Pokeballs that basically guarantee the capture of any Pokemon, even if it's a trainer's Pokemon, and can ensure that you could also not only capture the legendary creatures or mythical creatures that already exist in this world, but also Mew and the escaped creation Mewtwo. Now, of course, we, playing the game, break through Silphco, take out Rocket Grunts after Rocket Grunts before appearing in front of Giovanni himself. Once defeated, he leaves to an unknown hideout, only to reappear once more as the final gym leader in Viridian, all with one final offer that is fairly similar across all forms of Giovanni's final battle in Generation 1. Defeat me and I will disband Team Rocket, but if you win, you will become my loyal right hand. Giovanni shows once more that he's the man of the deal, a man of confidence for that matter. He is sure of his own victory and already loves the challenge that sits before him, something he has not experienced in years. After all, this one person has done what not even the champion has done. Climbed through Team Rocket, defeating them one by one, his executives and himself, even if he didn't have his full team. That is something that needs respect. And so in his own way, respect is shown through challenging and fighting on fair terms, making a deal. And, of course, defeated again, he truly does disband Team Rocket, disappearing to never be seen again. Well, at least that's what he wanted everybody to think, because it is through the Celebi events that would occur years later in real life, we would be directly shown the moments that Giovanni left Silver behind after being defeated by Red. We would see that the last conversation that they had was on Route 22, and the moment that the soul-crushing abandonment would change Silver for life, as Giovanni, in a selfish act, chooses himself over everybody else and disappears. Eventually, we would travel to the Sevi Islands. The prototypes of Archer and Ariana would be defeated, their names not being shown yet because they didn't have names, and they were unaware that Team Rocket had actually dissolved and how they were the last remnants of the organization on this secluded island. And this is very much like the story of Hiro Onada, who was deployed to Lubang in the Philippines as guerrilla warfare in 1944 during World War II. They announced him dead back in 1959, only for him to just pop back up after, well, I mean, they found him. They tried searching for him, and he only surrendered in 1974, a whole 30 years after the end of the war. And when he came back, he was offered a very large sum of money in back pay, basically being like, yo, you were a soldier for 30 years, got no pay from it, we have no idea how you survived, you basically deserve all this money. And he goes, no, I'm good, I don't want it. They force it onto him, and then he donates it to the Yasukuni Shrine. Onoda was not forgotten, but rather he could not be found. He fully embraced the principles of his country's military command, and could not believe that loss was even possible. Nevertheless, this is exactly what's happening with our admins here on the Sevi Islands until they are defeated and shown the truth. Shown that their organization, that their group, their people could lose. As we look at the original Pokemon series for a moment, the difference we find in the anime is that Giovanni's story follows Mewtwo a little bit closer. In Mewtwo Strikes Back, he even has Fuji create a clone of Mewtwo for him, and this is, of course, where we get the classic armored Mewtwo from. Look how cool he is! Commanding him to then defeat trainers in gym battles and help Team Rocket with their attempts to steal Pokemon. Mewtwo would eventually realize that Giovanni saw him not as equals, but as a servant, would destroy Giovanni's base and escape. And then Giovanni would go on a vacation and be like, wow, that sucked. I have money. I could just go to the Bahamas, I guess, and unwind. But then Giovanni decided to seek out Mewtwo once more in Mewtwo Returns, where after Giovanni tracked the legendary Pokemon down and attempted to force it into his submission, Ash and the gang came and saved the day. Mewtwo erases the memories of Giovanni and Team Rocket, excluding our lovely trio, and removes any memory of Mewtwo from them completely, and takes the spring and basically, sanctuary that all of the cloned Pokemon were being cared for by Mewtwo and hides them under the mountain instead. We'll come back to the anime version of Giovanni later. The Golden Timeline. 3 years after Giovanni's disappearance, old Team Rocket attempts to revive the organization and bring Giovanni back. Though their major issue now is that they don't have the same funding that they used to. So, back to doing literally every bit of crime possible in order to build that back up. They attempt to take Slowpoke tails from Slowpoke Well and sell them on the black market in order to increase their funding, and this operation is actually completed by Executive Proton. Their attempts at illegal hustles would extend to harassing people such as the Kimono Girls, charging ludicrous prices to get through checkpoints without having to go through the grass, and even having a Pokemon herb medicine front. And it was here in Mahogany Town that they would conduct their research once more, attempting to force evolution onto Pokemon before they were ready, causing a rampaging Gyarados to appear in the nearby Lake of Rage, north of Mahogany, and accidentally garnering the attention of the champion of Johto, Lance. The base is broken into by Lance and ourselves, or rather Gold and Lance, and it is here that the entire operation is revealed, showing how the evolution of Pokemon is far more valuable and radio waves were being used to force evolution and simultaneously brainwash Pokemon, all while turning that profit, that money. All the while, we find Ariana and Petrol here as well, who confront us and are defeated, both being Rocket executives. Clearly, they were desperate to bring Team Rocket back. They didn't want to believe that it was gone. It couldn't be. How could, even though, you know, there was proof that they were defeated, how could they just sit back, and let this happen? They need their leader back. And so, they sit here distraught. Once again, their plans have been thwarted. Their base has been destroyed, and they have little to no funds left. As such, they only have one more last-ditch effort left to try and bring back their beloved leader, Giovanni. Take over Goldenrod City's radio tower. Its signals reach throughout all of Johto after all, and if he couldn't be found in Kanto, then he must be in Johto. They take over the radio tower, send out their message through the airwaves, and we catch on to it. Getting sent to the tower, we defeat Petrol disguised as the chairman of the radio tower and travel through, around, under, and back up to the top of the tower while taking down each of the executives one last time. At the top stands interim head of Team Rocket, Executive Archer. He was Giovanni's trusted confidant and deputy. He had been praised by Giovanni time and time again for his efforts and analysis. He stands before us in anger for defeating Giovanni and rooting his loved organization, and he himself is defeated, officially then deciding to disband Team Rocket for good. Though, we have an interesting detail in the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee games, because it is here that we find Archer waiting for our main character in Giovanni's old office. He is still just as upset, and after being defeated, he reveals that he was drafting a letter. The letter states how he expected us to eventually find him, a congratulation for becoming champion, and how he intends to leave Kanto to found a stronger incarnation of Team Rocket and then return with this revived organization. Archer actually tears up, questioning what he wanted the player to think of him, then leaves. It's almost as though Archer wishes for two things. One, to defeat us and show that Team Rocket can live on despite what has happened in the past. And two, to live up to the expectations of Giovanni through being worthy of praise one final time. All by showing us that we can be defeated and Archer's strength could be recognized once more. Giovanni's animated return. Giovanni and Team Rocket would disappear for generations in the games, but in the anime we have a different story. Ultimately, Giovanni continues to serve as a more hands-off role as he directs the Team Rocket trio through their efforts, even taking on a more antagonistic role in the Pokemon Black and White series. He has more regular contact with the Team Rocket trio, being their benefactor and sending them on consistent missions where they are far more dastardly incompetent than ever before. They even worked in opposition to Team Plasma. In fact, in the games, we have only 2 instances of Team Rocket being mentioned in comparison. The first instance is when a Plasma Grunt states how Team Rocket tried to make their way here, but they were doomed to fail as they drew too much direct attention to themselves. After all, Team Plasma worked in small numbers and then would strike hard from the shadows or in large groups suddenly. Team Rocket was big, boisterous, and loved to show their power and cruelty openly. And in a densely populated Unova, where the gym leaders were in better contact with each other, yeah, they were really doomed to fail. I mean, if we look at the Pokemon mini-series, Pokemon Generations, we literally get to see how all of the gym leaders appear. I mean, that kind of happens in the games also, but seeing all the gym leaders appear when the big castle blasts up is amazing. Unlike Kanto or Johto, where these big moments are happening and nobody's there to help. I mean, I guess, you know, Lance pops up in Johto, but that's really it. Where are the rest of our champions? Where are the rest of our gym leaders? Why aren't they doing anything? The other instance is when we meet an ex-Team Rocket member who states how they intended to establish Team Rocket within Unova, but gave that up when they fell in love and got married. We could very well assume this is our Archer, someone who is incredibly pragmatic, actually. After all, if his own boss gave up everything after being defeated, he should not let his emotions cloud his decisions, and he should live more amicably. Give up the game, and live in peace as he could assume Giovanni is doing right now. Back to the anime though, they had fought with Galactic and lost the Meteo Knight, a relic of the past. And in 2 scrapped episodes, we would have seen the 2 factions battling one last time over it, as Team Rocket would confront Getsis over it, and both teams would eventually lose to Pikachu, who comes in and saves the day. A long term of absence leads up to Operation Tempest, as Giovanni himself has stepped onto Unova to spearhead the mission. The big boss is here. He would then capture Meloetta, use her to control Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus in an attempt to conquer Unova, and for the first time in history, he directly battles Ash, with Persian defeating Pikachu, capturing him and Ash, and forcing Meloetta to now comply to Giovanni's demands. The reveal glass is then summoned by Meloetta's singing, which is then used to gather the forces of nature and force them into their Therian forms in order to battle off the protagonists and, again, conquer Unova. Pikachu aids in the escape, but the reveal glass flies through the air and strikes Giovanni, causing him to become possessed in a weird way, and for him to declare against his own followers' wishes that he would destroy Unova instead of conquering it as he had originally intended. He then began to freeze the entirety of the lands in ice, but then was saved by our Rocket Trio, and as he was taken away by them and Dr. Zager, he openly contemplated how his worst instincts nearly brought about his own end. The reveal glass showed what he truly wanted deep down inside. And after this, in the anime, he basically just kind of becomes the boss that Team Rocket reports into. Truly nothing but a benefactor then. So there's nothing extensive to talk about here, as he just kind of gets mildly pleased anytime a new Pokemon is caught for him, and he in turn gives info to Team Rocket. Oh hey, you could use Z crystals. Oh hey, this is what this Pokemon does. Oh hey, go catch it. Oh, you brought me a tiny little Pokemon. I love it. This self-proclaimed strongest trainer. In Black 2, White 2, there is a Pokemon World Tournament, and it is in this game's version where instead of battling Blue from the original games, we would instead encounter Giovanni, who returns to exclusively use ground-type Pokemon. And while every gym leader is introduced by their title, it is here where Giovanni does not have a title, instead being introduced as the self-proclaimed strongest trainer. No other story beats to really talk about here, but this clearly shows that if this is our Giovanni, that he hasn't given up yet, that he is still out there fighting for what he desires, all while staying hidden within the shadows. But there's more than one Giovanni out there. The strongest Giovanni. In the events of episode Rainbow Rocket within Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, which I recently got to play for the first time, and I gotta say, the implications of everything within it is terrifying, and I love it! Festival Plaza is taken over, followed by the entirety of Lucamine's mansion being transformed into the Rainbow Rocket hideout. And nobody within Alola even knows who Team Rocket is to begin with. We watch as in an opportunistic broadcast where Lucamine is reporting on the existence of Ultra Beasts, Necrozma, and the events that have occurred within the game. Wormholes open up in the background and Team Rocket appears, smacking down the camera and announcing their takeover of Alola, as this will serve as a great place for their operations. We arrive on the scene, beat down some lovely Team Rainbow Rocket as we relive all the music once more, crack into the new castle, and get to confront all of the past team leaders from their evil organizations, all of whom begin to reveal their success stories, but also their tragic ends. Maxie states how he succeeded, taking over the world and awakening Groudon, but the last thing he remembers is falling into a giant fissure. Archie speaks on how he flooded the world, but the last thing he remembers was falling deep into its waters. Cyrus contemplates his own last moments, how the Great Shadow appeared, not knowing it was Giratina, and how it had taken him away, only to wake up here, asking us, is this the new world? Lysander romanticizes turning this world into one of Paradise next, as the last thing he remembers is a giant beam of light crashing down upon him, which we would know is what would happen after he fired the great weapon. And Getsis. Oh, Getsis. He's the only one that does not really tell his story. Instead, it seems as though Getsis might be fully aware of what was supposed to happen to him and how he got a second chance. But he was never the one to accept defeat. He's a cockroach that will live on no matter what it takes, but he would never admit that he was a cockroach. He would never admit about how his success had brought about his own demise. The closest hint we get is how he states his success in separating Pokemon from humans. If we look at Black 2, White 2, his closest soldiers, the Shadow Triad, took him away at the end of the story. They state how he is no longer mentally capable of any further criminal deeds after he has lost his heart and is no longer a threat to Unova. While this is metaphorical, having lost mental sanity and the resolve he had to continue, there's a very good chance that he would have been set for assassination in the world in which he succeeded in his plans. All because even the majority of his own organization did not know his real, true plan, which was to simply abuse Pokemon and rule with an iron fist. As such, his defeat in Team Rainbow Rocket would reveal a glimpse of what that final mental collapse would look like, as he tried to hold Lily hostage before Cyrus came in and made him go. Finally, we reach Giovanni himself, a man that states how he had succeeded in his mission for world domination already. But this can't be true. Alola has no idea who this tyrant is. No, this means that this is a different Giovanni. Like all the rest of the leaders we find here, he is from a different universe than our own. A Giovanni that never lost a single battle in his life. He reveals that Team Rainbow Rocket took over the Aether Foundation in order to access their research data and technology of other worlds, with the intention of building themselves an army of Ultra Beasts and conquering the multiverse. After the player defeats Giovanni, he states how this feels strangely nostalgic, but he doesn't know why. It's because he has forgotten that battle that was supposed to be an incredible challenge from back in Generation 1. It's all the same once more, except this time he loses. He accepts his defeat and leaves, allowing Chorus to restore the mansion to its original state, and also send everyone back to their original worlds. Though at the end, of the Team Rainbow Rocket episode. He had escaped from everyone and stands on a rooftop. He contemplates what he's done, how he would leave this universe alone, but how there are other universes to take over. Which ties into something I had not realized before my research, as Giovanni was speaking about his arrival into the real world as Team Rocket would invade it through Pokemon Go and even go beyond and arrive within Pokemon Masters EX, where he would directly speak about his time as leader of Team Rainbow Rocket. Pokemon Masters Giovanni. While in Pokemon Go, Giovanni acquired resources by taking over Pokestops. It was after his vacation in our world that he decided to jump into the world of Pokemon Masters EX. The story here is simple, but basically, Rainbow Rocket 2.0 is now here as they have Lusamine, Guzma, and Chairman Rose all added to their team in the villain arc of Pokemon Masters EX. Giovanni took over Professor Bellis's lab, and with the power of his grunts and Mewtwo, he took all the research data that he needed on the Sync Stones. He imbues Mewtwo with the power, but realizes it is too much for Mewtwo as it flies away and he chases after it. This further results in the energy coming off of Mewtwo to cause all Pokemon to start acting out of control. Its psychic signal is followed, and we meet Giovanni in a forest alongside his grunts. He then states that one day, one of them may understand his actions, before a large rumbling begins and Giovanni escapes through the use of Nidoqueen and appears before Red and Blue, who were ready to fight Mewtwo. Here, Giovanni tells Mewtwo that it should focus on using its power for evil deeds, and shockingly enough, Mewtwo just listens and even evolves into Mega Mewtwo Y, who then defeats Red, Blue, Misty, and Erica after pushing Mewtwo past its limits. And this is the last time that we see Giovanni, and it is a terrifying moment because it means that Mewtwo has somehow bonded with Giovanni, otherwise it should not have Mega evolved. His current whereabouts are unknown, but a certain character in the story, Paulo, may know where he is, or may actually be that one person who understands Giovanni, as Paulo was interested in Giovanni's power. So as I reached the end of this arc, I actually realized that my information was absolutely incomplete, as there was far more to the villain arc than I had actually thought. So this is going off the cuff based on the videos that I actually just watched showing the full villain arc. So, ultimately, Giovanni comes back, he has a Hoopa, Hoopa goes unbound, he's like, yo, check out this power, dude. We don't get a betrayal from Boyo that is interested in Giovanni and his power. Instead, that Boyo, Paulo, is like, hey, these grunts don't even realize they're being used. Meanwhile, Giovanni is standing at the top. You battle your way all the way through to Giovanni once more. He has Mewtwo Y, he has Hoopa Unbound, and as Paulo and a number of the other characters are fighting against him, he eventually goes, I'm done, and sends his Pokemon away. Paulo sits there and goes, what is wrong with you? You're not the type of person to sit here and go, I'm done with the fight, I don't need to do this, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing here? He goes, and Giovanni says, I'm setting a bad example for my subordinates, but I know when I've lost a battle. I mean, I could keep fighting you and eventually win, but that would be a waste of my resources. There will be more opportunities in the future. Plus, Hoopa kinda realized that it's being evil and that it probably shouldn't act this way, and as such, that kind of puts a kink in my plans a little bit. So, I'm done. I'll be back though. After all, I have to rule the world. I'm not gonna ever stop. And then, using Mewtwo, out of existence. He's just gone. So, that's where he actually is. He's gone somewhere else. The villain arc is concluded and he's still out there. Where will Giovanni go from here? Giovanni is by all means a Pokemon master. Sure, outside of the story, he gets a Signa suit with Guzzlord, and this could have some major implications. A Signa suit is usually created by a special designer, but clearly Giovanni has all the info he needs, and he was able to create it so he could have a stronger bond with his Pokemon. In this case, the world-devouring Guzzlord, which could mean that Giovanni is holding entire worlds hostage at this point, if not universes. After all, Guzzlord succeeded in taking over Alola after the lands were ruined by corporate expansion that ruined nature and caused the Tapus to depart. So who knows? Maybe Giovanni had a hand in that, or is at least causing it to happen in other universes through his own greed. And he might be employing other Giovannis for all we know. But that is all just speculation. All we know is that Giovanni is ambitious, a true genius, and arguably one of the greatest Pokemon masters of all time. Though he is twisted in his morals and holds true only to himself and the deals that he decides to make. He is bound to return time and time again given the opportunity. After all, he is truly multiversal now. So maybe one day he will return having done something like, I don't know, conquered Arceus. But I digress once more, as that is the complete story of Giovanni and Team Rocket so far. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to the members that you are seeing on screen that help support the channel. You can become a member for as little as $3 a month. You get early access to videos if you are a member on YouTube. You get behind the scenes content and a fun Discord role that gives you an access to a special chat only members have. But with that then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I want to do. Don't think I want to do. Please be nice to each other. I love you and I'll see you next time. Bye!